Recording is on.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga by the Pool, our inaugural class for the month of June 2022. And this month is going to be largely based on your requests. So give me some feedback on what you'd like to see this month, and I'll be sure to work it into our yoga practice for the month of June. Today we have a request for hip flexor releases, which is super good because we sit a lot and which shortens our hip flexors. When we have tight hip flexors, it can affect our lower back because the hip flexors actually attach back here in the lumbar spine area. So when we're tight here, it pulls back here. So we're going to do a lot of releasing. I have a block today. If you have one, we will be doing a hip flexor release in a supported bridge. If you don't have a block, a really thick book will do the trick also, or maybe roll up a towel or a small pillow to be able to prop the lower back up on that. So let's come to a standing position in mountain pose. So Joyce requested that we start with breath of joy this morning. And it's a joyful morning. So with breath of joy, we start in mountain pose. We'll inhale and bring the arms forward. Take more of an inhale, bring the arms out. Then take your maximum inhalation, the arms come up, and a full exhalation, we just throw it down to the ground. So we breathe in 1/3 of our breath, 2/3, all the way in, and exhale. We'll sniff in through the nose, the nose, the nose, and the mouth. We breathe into the belly, the ribs, the chest, and exhale forcefully. So you can do this breath of joy at any pace you'd like to do. It's going to also warm up our hips and our thighs, our ankles, the shoulders, and the spine. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out. We start to bring a lot of oxygen to our working muscles, to all of our tissues, and that nice forceful exhalation will help us get rid of CO2, some of those toxins that might be stuck in our bloodstream. And it just makes us feel joyful. Let's do 2 more. 1 more. And then just rise up to mountain pose. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes for a moment. Just come inside and bring your awareness to the physical properties of that breath of joy. Maybe a little tingling in your fingers, the heart rate elevated, the breath rate as well. And then blink your eyes open. We'll take the right foot and cross it gently behind the left. This is going to put us into a little turn out position. In ballet, we call this 5th position. We'll take the right arm up and take a little side bend over. You can support here at your waist. You can bring the gaze up and take a few nice deep breaths into the right side of your rib cage. Opening up through your lats, stretch through the shoulders. And you might feel a little small stretch in the outside of the hip, little muscle called the TFL, tensor fasciae lata, and it's connected with your hip flexor, that iliopsoas muscle. Let's bring it down, and then switch the cross of your feet. Toes are turned out, heel to the big toe of the other foot. Inhale, reach the arm, and side bend. And just begin to notice the pada bandha, and that's the connection of your feet into the mat. The strength that you draw from the earth up into the legs. And deepen the breath right into that rib cage. So we're opening the intercostal space. And then we'll lower that arm down. Come back to mountain, either bringing the feet tight together or hips distance apart. We'll inhale the arms up. Exhale, press the palms. Exhale to chair pose. And just hold your chair. Make sure that the upper body's not falling forward. So keep the chest lifted. Look over your right shoulder. Come back to center with the head. Look over the left shoulder. Come back to center. Inhale, sweep the arms up, maybe a baby back bend, slightly engaging your glutes, releasing the hip flexors. Exhale back to chair. And we'll look over the right shoulder, but twist the body a little bit more, bringing the elbow around. See if you can see farther behind you. We'll come back through the midline and rotate the other direction. And back to center. Inhale, sweep up, give the legs a break, maybe a back bend. Exhale, chair, sink a little deeper this time. Rotate to the right, hold, and if it's comfortable for you, bring that left hand across the outside of your right knee. Right hand can be on your hip, or we can lift that arm up into our full wingspan twisting chair. And come back to center. Let's take a break before we switch sides. Inhale, come up. Exhale, sink down. Turning to your left side, either holding here or the right hand comes across to brace the outside of the leg, left hand to the hip, or reach it up. And come back to center. Inhale, sweep up one last time. Exhale, swan dive into a forward bend or half lift. The fingertips can come to the tops of the shins. And inhale, come back up. Exhale, forward bend. And one more time, breathe in. And breathe out to your forward bend and place your hands on your opposite elbows and just hang here in ragdoll pose for a moment. You can sway a little side to side. Just loosen up the lower back and the hamstrings. Nice and gently. And then we'll inhale, coming back up. Extend through the fingertips, upward salute. Press the palms and draw your thumbs into heart center. So take a step out with one foot and we'll turn that direction into warrior one. So since I'm facing the camera, I'm going to call this my right leg. So we'll come into warrior one, reach the arms and extend and stretch. So I want you to start to feel a stretch through that back hip flexor. And then open the arms into goalpost arms or cactus arms. And extend through the spine. 2 more breaths. And exhale, press the palms together. But just pivot on the feet. So turning the foot in, turning the other one out. Square your hips. Warrior one, the other direction. Stretch up, reach. Or open those arms out into our goalpost arms. And feel that sensation of drawing your shoulder blades back and down. And a gentle stretch through that back hip flexor. And then we'll press the palms back to the heart. Pivot back to the other side. And lengthen your stride and come into warrior two. So we'll extend. You can lengthen separate the feet a little bit wider apart. And if your arms get tired, hands can be at the hips or at your heart center. And I want you to focus on this hip by squeezing your glute muscle. So just engage this muscle, tense it up, and release the front of that hip. Take your gaze over the fingertips. Now reach out a little bit further and bring your elbow or your forearm down toward that thigh and reach the arm straight up to the ceiling for side angle pose. And we're still slightly engaging this glute. Opening up the hip flexor. And then start to lower this arm out toward the back ankle. It comes down and around all the way, and we'll make 3 big circles. And as you're circling, I want you to notice how the stretch position changes the elongation of your hip flexor. Now this time as you're circling around, as soon as the arm gets right next to that top ear, stop and roll that top shoulder back and really stretch through the entire side body. One more breath. Then pull yourself back up to your warrior two. We can press palms at your heart and switch the position of your feet. So pivot in the right foot, pivot out the left, sink down into your pose, make any adjustments that you need to really to find nice alignment here. And then we'll pay special attention to this back leg glute. So give it a little squeeze with the muscle, which will release that front hip flexor, and gaze over the left fingertips. So that's the principle of reciprocal inhibition. When we tighten one muscle, it releases the opposing muscle. Now reach out a little bit longer. Bring the elbow down towards your thigh. The arm goes straight up to the ceiling. Eye gaze can come up, and keep gently clenching that right side gluteal. Then we'll start to make a big circle with this arm. So it goes toward the back leg first, around toward the front leg, and try to make your circle as big as you can. So you're pulling your fingertips way out there from your shoulder, creating a nice dimension. And then on this one, as that arm comes right next to the top ear, stop and hold there. Reach out longer, roll the top shoulder back, and go back and revisit that muscle connection in your right glute. Slightly tense that muscle. Breathing, abdominals are braced. Then pull yourself right back up to your warrior two. And press the palms at your heart. Pivot both feet forward, so the sides of your feet are parallel to the edges of your mat. Place your hands in small fists on each side of your sacrum. And pull your shoulder blades back. Slightly clench both of the glutes as we come into a standing camel pose. So we're opening up through the fronts of the hip flexors, through the entire front body. And 2 more breaths. Nice and stable through your pada bandha, through your thighs. And then we'll rise back up, reach the arms up to 5-pointed star. And then exhale the arms down. We'll start to turn toward where you would like to be the top of your mat. So either to your right or left, pivot down, place your hands on the mat, step back to child's pose. And just remember, your child's pose is a place you can come to at any time during your practice. And then draw yourself up to your hands and knees, gently on all fours. If you need to take padding for your knees, you can make a little fold in your mat or maybe place a towel or a blanket underneath the knees. And we'll do one thread the needle by lifting the right arm up, stretch, and then thread it right through, setting the right shoulder down toward the floor, the right side of the head. And then bring your left hand right to rest on your lower back or on your sacrum. Just noticing whether that area of your hips are level. And breathe into the back side of your shoulders, into the shoulder blades. 2 more breaths in this gentle twist. And then bring that left palm underneath your shoulder to use the strength of your arm to press up, open back out, reach. And then lower that hand down. Take your right foot straight back behind you and turn the toes underneath so you have the ball of your foot pressing into the mat. And push a little energy there to get a little bit of a calf stretch. So we can stay here with the left knee on the ground, or lift up into a slight downward dog so the hips start to come up, and then you'll feel more of a stretch into that right heel, into the Achilles tendon and the calf muscle. And I have my left foot, the top of my foot, down onto the ground, and I'm going to slightly stretch the top of the arch of my left foot. And then we'll lower that knee down, coming back to all fours. Inhale, the left arm reaches up for our thread the needle. Exhale, rotate, looking to the right, lay that shoulder down and the side of the head. The right hand comes to rest on your sacrum. Just noticing whether this is level and straight across, and then we're not twisting our pelvis or leaning more on one knee than the other. Breathe into the back of the shoulders and the shoulder blades. 2 more breaths. Then bring the palm of the right hand down to press up with a strong tricep. Inhale, open. Exhale, come back to all fours. Take the left foot straight behind you, turning your toes underneath so the ball of the foot is into the mat, and push back into the heel. That's option 1. Option 2, we press into the hands, lift up into a slight down dog, dropping that left heel deeper and pressing into the top of the arch of the right foot. 2 more breaths. And then coming back to the knees into all fours. Rise up high on both knees. Make those fists again for our camel pose, this time from a kneeling position. So we place those fists on either side of the sacrum. Draw the shoulder blades back, lift the heart, gently engage the glutes, and tip the hips forward into any amount of a back bend that you'd like this morning. And our goal is to feel this hip flexor release. So that's where I'd like you to extend through the front of your body. 1 more breath. Use your core to help you come back up. Inhale, reach the arms, stretch. Exhale, drop the right arm by your side and start to turn that right direction, looking over your shoulder to see where your heel is. You can also tuck your toes underneath here, which will lift your heels a little higher. Maybe you reach the heel. Perhaps you're taking the fist behind the lower back again. And then we'll align both hips straight ahead, engaging the glutes as we twist the body into this rotated camel pose. And notice the stretch in the hip flexors, maybe even in the quads. My quads are really tight, so I'm feeling it right up the fronts of my legs as well. And then inhale, come back up to center. Exhale, rotate and bring the left arm down. See if you can find that heel, either reaching there or making that fist behind your sacrum on the left side. Then realign both hips straight forward and twist your body any amount, looking over the left shoulder. And create a nice dynamic tension by lifting upward toward the earth through the fingertips, but being grounded to the earth into the lower body. And we'll inhale, reach up. Exhale, bring the hands again to the back, the fists, or maybe you can reach back and find both heels behind you. And open up the heart 1 more time, gently engaging both glutes to release the hip flexors. Now, if your head going back is bothersome to you, you can bring your chin forward and still do camel pose without releasing the neck. And inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, swan dive into child's pose. So reach those fingertips out, way out toward the top of your mat. If your toes were tucked under, you can allow them to be flat again to your mat. And then we'll walk the hands in. You may need a block for this next series, so have that close if you need for a little bit of flexibility help. And we'll take the right foot and take a nice big step forward toward the top of your mat and come down into Anjanae Asana. This is our wonderful hip flexor stretch, and we'll feel that on the back side hip, that left hip. So we'll reach the left arm and stretch it way up. Sink down into the left hip and slightly clench your back glute. So just give it a little squeeze. And then we'll start to twist toward that front leg. And maybe the palm of the hand or the back of the wrist finds the thigh there as we twist. You can take this a little deeper, bringing the elbow down, coming into twisting prayer lunge. So whatever you would like for this stretch. The twist gives us more release on that back hip flexor. And then as we come back to center, inhale, reach the arms up, stretch. Exhale, bring the hands down, and maybe they're finding a block or the mat, and we'll shift the stretch back behind you and feeling that in your front hamstring. Now we always need to have a little soft bend in this front knee when we're stretching the hamstring, just a little micro bend so that we're not locking out that joint. So we are going to do these two poses one more time, either repeating as we did or rising up to a standing lunge. So we can either shift back into our low lunge where the knee is on the floor, or we can tuck the back toe underneath to lift the knee off the mat, coming up into high lunge. So definitely a little bit more balance here. So if really the flexibility is your goal today, come back down to your knees so that you're able to really perform the pose well. So we'll lift that left arm up again, stretch and reach, and then start to twist that same direction, maybe bringing the wrist across the thigh, or the palms can press, elbow comes into your twisting prayer lunge. And we'll take 3 breaths here. And on your third exhalation, come back to center, reach down to the mat, and your back knee can be down or the knee lifted as we straighten the front leg to again experience that hamstring stretch. So if you like being up off the knee, but it's tough for you to reach the floor, that's where your block comes in handy to bring your body up a little bit more and support you here. Wherever you are today, take 3 more breaths. That front foot can be pointed down to the earth, or you can flex it up for more intensity in that stretch. And then we'll shift back into that front leg. Let's all drop the knee back down. And then heel toe, walk this right foot wider toward the edge of your mat, bringing both hands in the center. Again, a block is a great tool to help support you here. We can come down any amount. Maybe the elbows come down to your block or to your mat. And it's the back leg hip flexor that we really have our focus on today. So again, put a little attention there and gently squeeze your left glute. And that action will help the hip flexor let go and release any tension and tightness in that muscle. Now bring yourself up a little bit for a second and take this front foot, turn it out on about a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to roll my knee open, so I'm coming on the outside of this foot a little bit. And I can press this knee open and twist my body over the right shoulder. I can be up on my hand, on my block, or I can be down on the elbow. And then clench that left glute just a little bit. Sink that hip down deeper toward the floor. Just 2 more breaths here. And come back to center. We can realign that foot. And then with both hands in the middle, just swing that right leg back and come into your child's pose. Just take a couple of breaths just to be aware of sensations in your body, noticing changes. And then take your time to set up for the series of poses on the left leg. So our left foot will step forward, a nice big step, so we can drop down into this right hip flexor. For most of us, the right hip tends to be a little tighter and more problematic. So let's gently clench that glute, reach the right arm up, stretch, then start to gently twist and see if you can bring that right wrist across the left thigh. I like just placing my left hand on my hip to rotate, or you can press the palms and twist your prayer lunge. Once you have the pose, then go back to tightening that right glute. And bring your awareness to the breath, inhaling and exhaling. Nice and stable through your core and through your Pada Bandha, that foot lock on the left foot. And we'll come back to the center. Bring your fingertips down, floor or the block, and shift back into your first hamstring stretch on this side. And this side could be a lot tighter, so just be patient with yourself. Come down nice and slowly, never forcing the stretch, just gently breathing into it. Take your time to get there. And again, make sure you've got a little micro bend in this knee. And the foot flexed up gives you more intensity into the calf muscle. So either repeating the kneeling series one more time, or shift forward into that front knee and tuck the back toes underneath, lifting up off the back knee into your high lunge. So again, if the stretch is more important than working on balance, keep that knee down. We'll lift the right arm, stretch up. Start to rotate again to the left side, bringing the wrist across the thigh, and you're bracing it there gently, or bringing the elbow down into your twisting prayer lunge. Then start to squeeze that right glute. Just a little bit of tension. 2 more breaths. Coming back to center, reach down. The bottom knee can drop even if you're in your standing lunge to go into your hamstring stretch. So 2 choices here. And the block is a good tool to help reach the floor. And toe can be pointed or flexed. 3 breaths. Beautiful. We'll come back down to the knee and begin to walk this left foot out to the left side of your mat. Make sure it's at least under your knee or maybe even further forward. Bring both hands to the center. We can use our block here. Tighten this back glute just a little bit. And then see where you can go, lowering your arms perhaps deeper into the pose. Now make sure that your back knee isn't more under your hip with your bum in the air. So we want to drop it down. You might even tuck your back toes a little bit and lift your knee up off the mat and slide it back further. to get more room here in this stretch. Then come up for just a moment and turn this front foot out about 45 degrees. Let your knee come away from you and roll to the outside edge of that left foot. Place your left hand gently on the inside of your knee and twist your body. And notice as soon as you twist, that causes your right hip to drop lower to the floor. And maybe coming down onto your elbow, looking way up over that left shoulder, 3 breaths. Then slowly coming back to the midline, realign that front foot, push yourself back to your child's pose. And just take a little break there. And hopefully feeling now that equilibrium from the right to the left sides of your body. So we'll prepare for down dog or our dolphin pose. If you have any wrist issues, you can come to your elbows, lift those hips nice and high. So we've already generously stretched the hamstrings. So hopefully the back of your legs will feel lengthened as we hold our down dog, pressing both heels evenly toward the earth. Then inhale forward to plank pose. Your option is to be in high plank with your knees off the floor, or let your knees drop down. And then lift your right leg up, clench your glute, and I want you to try to lift it up from your hip, not from your knee, and not by arching your back. So keep your abs pulled in and really lift that leg. So down on the knee, it's the same thing. And we're working that glute to release the hip flexor. 2 more breaths with the right leg up, or come down when you need. Then lower that right leg down, drop the knees for a moment, press off the hands. Just a short break for your wrists. Then glide forward back to your plank. From the knees or the toes, hold your nice plank. And again, from your forearms is wonderful too. So we can be right here. Then we'll lift that left leg up, clench the buttock on that side to open up your hip flexor with reciprocal inhibition. A wonderful core exercise as well as we breathe. 2 more breaths. Back knee can drop down at any time. 1 more breath. Then lower those knees. Push yourself back to 1 more child's pose here. So just notice if you felt any tension in your lower back doing that particular exercise. Because again, while we're stretching the hip flexor, sometimes that pulls onto your lower back. So let's transition to laying on your back and have your block close as well as your yoga strap too. And then we'll just give our lower back a nice release by hugging the knees in towards the chest. And we'll do egg beater circles. So we'll press the knees forward with the hands, separate them circling out. Your big toes are still touching, and then come back toward you and close your knees. So we push, open like a clamshell, pull toward you and close. Push, circle open, pull toward you, close. 2 more this direction. And try to keep your lower back down on the floor as you push the legs away. 1 more. and close. Now reverse. You have your knees in close to you. Press the knees apart like a clamshell. Push them forward. Close them together and pull them toward your chest. And I'm using my fingertips to help me do this, but it's mostly my core and a little bit of hip flexors that we're actually activating here. Low back presses into the mat 2 more times this direction. Your big toes stay connected through the whole circle. Last one. Then hug your knees into your chest and relax your feet down to the mat. So start to walk your feet fairly wide. Like kind of find the outside edges of your mat on either side, and your knees are that same distance apart. We'll start to move into windshield wipers by dropping both knees over to one side and then switching. And you'll notice my opposite hip is coming off the mat. So we're allowing our pelvis to rotate from side to side, but your shoulders are implanted into the mat. You can use your elbows out to the side for a little bit of support, or your arms out like a T. So each time you drop the knees, you'll squeeze the glute on the upper hip. So when I drop my knees to the right side, I'm going to squeeze the left buttock. And as I drop my knees to the left side, squeeze the right buttock. That will give you that release in the hip flexor. Just a couple more. And then the next time you drop your knees to the left side of your body, stay right there, clench your right glute, and hold this position. So we can also take the left ankle and gently place your foot up over the right thigh, the outside of your knee, to give yourself a little bit more intensity in this stretch. But if this gives you any discomfort in your knees, then keep that ankle down onto the floor. This is also a gentle twist through the waistline, so send your breath into the right side of your rib cage. Keep gently clenching the right glute. One more breath. Then pull your knees back up to the center line. You might need to make some adjustments where they're placed on your mat so they're still wide. And drop both knees over to the right. Allow your left hip to lift and slightly clench the glute. Option to place your right foot up on top of your left thigh, outside of the knee, and to weight that stretch just a little bit. Then bring your awareness back to the left glute, give it a little bit of a squeeze, and send your breath into the left side rib cage. One more breath. And release the foot. Come back to the center with the knees. And then walk the feet close together. We'll let Delta Airlines go by for just a second. And then we'll come into Batakonasana. So the knees gently fall away from each other. Soles of the feet are connected. And totally relax your hip flexors and inner thighs. So again, we're going to use the tension of the glutes to release the hip flexors by squeezing both of your glutes and trying to open your knees wider toward your mat. So this is gentle. We don't want to really clench those glutes vigorously. It's just a gentle contraction. All it takes is a little bit to signal the hip flexors to relax. And we'll take 2 more breaths here. And then let's close those knees back together. Bring your feet hips distance apart. The heels are fairly close to your glutes as we begin to tuck the tailbone underneath to imprint your lower back and slowly rise up into a bridge. So when we are at the top of our bridge, it gives us our maximum release for the hip flexor. So if our bridge is really small like this and I'm still flexed through my hips, I'm not going to get much of a stretch here. So see if you can contract your glutes and lift your hips even half an inch higher. And then one bone at a time, roll yourself down, releasing the connection in your glutes until your spine comes to neutral. And we'll do that twice more. Tuck the tailbone under, imprint your lower back, roll up into bridge, push down into your feet, squeeze the glutes, lift up with your hips, 2 breaths. Then take your time to roll down, tucking your tailbone at the very, very end to press your lower back into the mat. Then shift your pelvis back to neutral. Take a breath in. Exhale, push into your feet. Roll yourself up one last time. Now, as we hold this one, you might like to clench your fingers behind your back, interlace them, and then rock a little bit from side to side up onto the backs of your triceps. And this may help you to get a little bit more lift into your bridge. And let's hold here 3 more breaths. Go back to clenching the glutes just gently. And then if your hands are interlaced, separate them and start to roll back down 1 vertebra at a time. Tuck your tailbone at the very end and hug your knees back into your chest. And maybe a couple basic knee circles around just to release that low back. Let any tension go in the lumbar spine, a couple each direction. So now you will need your yoga block and your strap for the next stretch. We're going to do a supported bridge. So if you take your block and lift your hips up into a little bit of a bridge, just tall enough to get the block underneath that wide part of your hips. So it's underneath your sacrum, not underneath your lower back. So you should be able to put your hand under here and your lower back is completely clear. You're nice and stable onto your pelvis. And let's just slide the left leg forward and straighten it, and you'll feel a release in your hip flexor. Now, depending on how high your block is, you might be lifted up a little bit more. And of course, your block has 3 heights. So I have mine down on the lowest position right now. I'm not feeling too much of a stretch. So I'm going to press back up into bridge and flip my block up to the medium position and see how that feels. Well, now that I'm there, I feel a little bit too much tension in my lower back, which I don't want to experience. So I think for me, the better one is that lower position back down. So just kind of play with it and see where you need to be in your body. And then we'll hug the right knee into the chest, just pull it in, and notice that helps to increase your hip flexor stretch here. Then if you'd like, you can begin to elongate the right leg straight up into your hamstring stretch. And here's where you can use your yoga strap, placing it under the bottom of the foot. Mine is out of my reach. I'm going to grab it here. And place it under the ball of the foot if you're using your yoga strap. So that way you can actually flex your ankle. If you place it under the heel or the arch, you won't get quite as much stretch through the calf muscle. So we'll hold this stretch, releasing the left hip flexor and the right hamstring. And we'll be here for several breaths, so make sure you're in a position where you feel nice and relaxed. maybe holding another 60 seconds. Now, if you don't have a block, this can be done right on the floor as well. Just won't quite give you the same release in the left hip flexor, but a wonderful stretch. And for our last few breaths, see if you can increase a little bit more stretch. Slow the breath down. Relax your entire body. And a last breath in, nice and deep, generous breath. Exhaling to release the stretch in the hamstring, maybe let go of the yoga strap. Set that foot down to the floor, and then we'll switch feet by drawing the left leg in, the right leg extends out, and just take a moment to notice the stretch on this side and see if you need to make any adjustments with your block. Sometimes it gets in an uncomfortable position, so you can fidget around a little bit, get nice and comfortable with it. And then we'll pull the left knee into the chest. And I can feel that intensity really increase as soon as I hug that knee in. It elongates the right hip flexor in a deeper way. We can stay here or start to unfold that leg, taking it up, maybe using your strap as well under the bottom of the foot, the ball of the foot. And knowing we're going to be here a while, you don't have to come to your full edge here quite yet at the beginning of the pose. So just experience the pose. Begin to surrender to the pose. Without tensing or gripping, allow the breath to help you relax. Now you can even gently clench the right glute here, as long as it doesn't create tension in the rest of your body, to experience that deeper hip flexor release. And for our last few breaths, maybe deepen by drawing that left leg in a little closer. But if your body responds by shaking or quivering, back off on that stretch. That's always a sign that the muscle is fighting the stretch. And let's take 2 more breaths here. Then slowly release, bending that left knee, releasing the yoga strap. The left foot comes down. And then you can either bend both knees and just stay here in a supported bridge, or try sliding both legs straight out and just see how that feels in your body. If you're feeling tension in your lower back, maybe that's not the pose for you today, go ahead and bend your knees, or you can release the block from underneath the hips. One other possibility here is to close the soles of the feet together in your supported bridge, open out into Batakonasana, releasing through the hip flexors and the inner thighs. So just about 4 or 5 breaths here, wherever the pose feels best in your body, relaxing and deepening. And then if you're still on the block, we'll prepare to remove it by placing the feet solidly into the floor, pressing up gently into a bridge, slide the block away, and slowly roll down, tucking the tailbone at the very end, then hug both knees right back into your chest. Then we'll curl the head and shoulders up off the mat so we're in a nice tight ball, and start to extend one leg at a time out toward the floor, and then switch. Now, if this is bothersome for your neck to have your head up, you can lay your head back down to the mat, or you can use your block and set it behind your head to keep your head lifted for you. Having the head up helps you to curve your spine and imprint your lower back into the floor. So as you continue to alternate knees, you can also alternate straight legs, pulling straight leg in and switching. Really scoop your abdominals in. Take one more on each side. Then hug both knees back into the chest and allow your head and shoulders to relax back down to the mat. Bring your knees to stack into tabletop and anchor your elbows, and very slowly come into an oblique rotation by dropping the knees slightly over to the right. They're not touching the mat. They're hovering off the floor to strengthen your obliques, and then pull them back up to the midline and drop them to the left side. Feeling the work through the core. If this seems a little bit too vigorous, set your feet down onto the floor and just drop your knees from side to side right here. It still gives you work. It still gives you the twist, but not as intense on your lower back. Let's take one more to each direction. And come back to center, hug those knees in one last time. And we'll prepare to come up to seated. So you can either roll yourself over to your side and press up, or hug behind your knees and roll forward until you have enough momentum to bring yourself up to seated. Then we'll come into our Batakonasana here in a seated position. So soles of the feet come together, the knees open, and my hips are tight. So my knees are way up and lifted. Yours might be closer to the mat, but just kind of notice what the distance is from your knees to the floor. Holding at the ankles, not grabbing the feet, we'll press the knees wide and squeeze the glutes. So we're creating a little bit of tension in the outside of the hips, and then let that tension go. 2 more times. Press down and release. 1 more time. Press down and hold. Then start to stretch your body forward until you find that stretch that's just right for you, but keep a little gentle tension, pushing those knees downward toward the floor. And notice where you're feeling the stretch. For me today, it's a little bit in my lower back, but that's common for me in this stretch. Also have some inner thigh, that groin area. Take 1 more breath here into your Badakonasana. And then we'll rise up. Walk the left hand out to the side of your mat and then swing this right foot. See if you can grab your ankle and swing it back around behind you to stretch your quad and your hip flexor 1 more time. Now, if grabbing your ankle is difficult, you can loop your yoga strap around your foot or just simply relax your leg down to the mat. What I want to do is squeeze that top glute 1 more time, press the hip forward, draw the knee back. And you can stay supported on this hand or lift the arm up, take a little bit of a balance pose here on the left hip. One more breath. And then release that ankle. Just shift your knees to the opposite direction, resting onto your right hand. Grab your left ankle while that knee is in close to your chest, and then draw it back behind you as far as you can. A gentle tightening through the left glute, and then perhaps we balance. Two more breaths here. And then we release, coming to a comfortable seat. Simple cross-leg pose is a great choice, or just elongate your legs out in front of you. We'll sit up tall and take a nice breath in, stretch. Exhale, lower those arms down. Two more breaths. Last inhale, reach up, allow your palms to press. Draw your thumbs into heart center. We'll close our eyes for just a few breaths to check in. Check in with the 3 B's, the brain, the breath, and the body. And just noticing how our brain or our thought process, our emotions, our breath, and our body have changed since the beginning of our practice today. We acknowledge that through this Anjali Mudra, our sign of honor and gratitude. And that honor and gratitude that resides within me honors honor and gratitude in each of you. Namaste. Namaste in the backyard. Namaste, Chris. Namaste, Melissa. And for any of you that can stay with me, I'm just going to run into the house to my other device because I cannot see anybody in the backyard, and we can have a little chat. If you can't stay, hopefully we'll see you for Backyard Boot Camp. I think it's going to be nice outside tomorrow. So if anybody wants to come, give me a text or an email in advance, and we'll meet in the backyard tomorrow if weather's good. So thanks so much, everyone. I'll see you shortly in just a second. Thank you so much, ladies. So I'm just shutting my microphone off.